guys, so I know it's been a super long time since I made a video on this channel, and I talked about some reasons why I haven't been making videos in a while on my main channel. So if you're at all interested in that, go check that out. I'll link it here. So I'm going to talk about my top 10 books of 2013 that I read in 2013. They didn't necessarily get published in 2013 because I tend to be behind the curve on a lot. My number 10 favorite book that I read in the year 2013 was Heart's Blood by Juliet Marillier. I have loved this author, Juliet, since I was in high school. The first book I read by her was Daughter of the Forest, which is still to this day remains to be one of my favorite books. And Heart's Blood was just as good as her books usually are. She has beautiful prose and she writes some very great adult fantasy novels that have kind of a romantic focus and also kind of feel a little YA without being actually YA. This does also write YA, but Heart's Blood was actually, I didn't realize this until after I finished reading the book, so it's not that obvious, is actually a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but it takes place in medieval Ireland. So it's really cool and it's really beautiful and it's really sweet. Just my ninth favorite book that I read in 2013 was Just One Day by Gail Forman. It's about this girl who goes and she's on this like kind of really scheduled trip, like post-graduation trip to Europe, and they go to a bunch of different cities, but she doesn't really have as much fun as everyone else on the trip. At the very end of it, she ends up meeting this guy in Stratford upon Avon, and he agrees to take her to Paris for a day, and romance and other things ensue. My number 8 favorite book for 2013 was Shades of Earth by Beth Revis. This was the last book in the Across the Universe trilogy, which I have been a fan of since it debuted a couple of years ago. It was an amazing, explosive ending. Everything that, if you like are at all into sci-fi or anything, you need to read this trilogy. It's amazing. My number 7 favorite book for 2013 is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. There were a lot of trilogies and series that ended this year and I read a lot of them. Clockwork Princess was my favorite of those finale. And since I read the first book in this trilogy, the Infernal Devices trilogy, I thought that the love triangle in it was one of the best, and I really like the way she kind of tied all that up in the last book, and I just thought it was a really sweet ending and really action-packed, and it answered a lot of our questions. I was just really blown away by it and actually kind of pleasantly surprised by how she ended it and how well she ended it. So number 6 on my list of favorite books of 2013 is Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson, and I had been meaning to read this book for a while, but I just kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off and putting it off because, you know, I never really felt like I was in the mood for like a depressing book. But obviously you've heard of Speak and you most likely have read it long before I did. It's amazing and beautifully written and so heartbreaking and yet so uplifting at the same time. So highly recommend this if you haven't read it already. Get on that. Number 5 on my list of top 10 books that I read in 2013 is Fire by Kristen Cashore. Graceling was probably one of my favorite books ever that I've ever read, and Fire is a great companion to it. I really liked how it was only loosely tied to Graceling, so at some points you kind of felt that it was in its own world, but then there were like certain threads that were like, yo, this is in the same world as Graceling and affects what happens in Graceling and all that stuff. So I really loved this, and I thought Fire was an excellent heroine and the romance was nice and the action was fantastic, and I just really love Kristen's writing as well. So number 4, what is actually not a whole book, it's not a novel, was a little novella called A Night of Cake and Puppets by Laini Taylor. It's book number 2.5 in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, and even though this wasn't really like an actual book, it was just like a little tiny e-novella, I loved it. I couldn't put it down. It was so funny and so sweet. It tells the story, if you've read A Daughter of Smoke and Bone, that series, it's told from Zuzana and Mick's point of view and tells about like how they got together, and it involves puppets and it's adorable, and I loved it so much. Zuzana has text messages with Carew, so she's not completely left out of the story, so you still get to see some of their friendship, which I love so much. So I highly recommend seeing it. It's kind of a nice break from all the sad things that happen in the main books in the series, because it's just so happy. And then my number 3 book for 2013 was actually a huge surprise for me. Like, I didn't think I'd like this book, but I really did. The Host by Stephanie Meyer. I completely understand why people don't like Twilight, but I really hate that that would keep them from reading this book because it really is really good. Well, it's about a girl, two girls really, Melanie and Wanderer. Melanie's a human girl, Wanderer's an alien who kind of takes over her brain, but then kind of comes to love the same people Melanie loves. So it ends up turning into this wonderful story about what it means to be human, and I really loved it, and it had me in tears at the end. Don't let Twilight keep you from reading this book, because this book is so good. And then my number 2 book for 2013 was A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. This book, so much happens in this book. Oh my god. I actually started reading this before 2013, and I read like the first quarter of it, I guess, and then kind of put it away and didn't pick it up again just because it's so long, and I just like, there are so many other books I want to read. But then the Red Wedding episode aired in the TV show, and I wasn't watching the TV show, but everybody online freaked out. So I was like, what is this Red Wedding everybody's talking about? I gotta find out. So I picked up this book and just read the rest of it, the last 3 quarters in a week, because so much happens and it was so exciting, and like the Red Wedding is ridiculously ridiculous, and I'm so excited for season 4 of Game of Thrones to air, because there are so many things that happen after the Red Wedding in this book. So many crazy things. I just can't wait to see people who just watched the show. I can't wait to see their reactions. It's gonna be hilarious to just be online watching those reactions happen. And then my number 1 book for 2013, this actually wasn't a hard decision for me to make at all, because this is my current favorite book series, and if you aren't reading it, please, you need to read the series. It is so beautifully written and so devastatingly romantic and so action-packed, and the world is amazing and the writing is amazing. Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor. It's the 2nd book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, and it was just as good as the first. I love the first. I reread it before I read this. It was just as good as that, and I'm just so excited for Dreams of Gods and Monsters, which is supposed to come out in April, I think, and I just can't wait. I'm so looking forward to it. I need to reread this and the first one before that comes out, but I feel like I tell so many people what these books are about, but I can't ever do them justice. Like, the first one basically is about this girl named Karu. She's an art student in Prague, and she works for this demon-like creature who's kind of also her father, and he makes her go and collect teeth for him, and he strings those teeth onto necklaces, but she doesn't know why. And in return for those teeth, he gives her wishes, and so she can like do all sorts of things with those wishes. They're kind of like, they're different tiers of wishes, and he only gives her the small wishes so she can like color her hair and stuff with the wishes and learn any language she wants and make people itch in places they wouldn't want to itch. So it's like, there are really funny parts and there are really devastatingly romantic parts, and there are beautiful parts and action-packed parts and such great world building. So yes, please read this series. I need people to talk about it too. Alright, so that was my top 10 list for 2013. I actually have a bonus book. If you're a writer, I read one writing craft book this year, but it was probably the best that I've ever read. It was Wired for Story by Lisa Cron, I think, and I had so many epiphanies and aha moments while reading this book about my own stories that I'm currently working on. And so I highly recommend it for anyone who is trying to write a novel, short story, anything fiction based, basically. Thanks for watching. Please leave your comments if you have a favorite book or 10 that you read in 2013, and yeah, hopefully you'll see more of me this year. Bye!